On October 4, 1943, inside the Reich Air Ministry in Berlin, the oak-paneled meeting room grew hushed as Reich Marshal Hermann Göring offered his evaluation to leading German aircraft producers. Stenographers captured his remarks, which would later stand as one of history's gravest errors in judgment. In Göring's view, the Americans lacked the ability to construct planes. They excelled at items like refrigerators and razor blades. Beyond the ministry's high windows, the gathered executives observed plumes of smoke ascending from Berlin's industrial sites, which labored furiously to offset losses suffered by the Luftwaffe. Despite early setbacks at Stalingrad and in North Africa, the Third Reich dominated much of Europe. Göring's perspective, molded by lingering perceptions from the 1920s, portrayed the United States as a land of jazz performers and traders skilled in consumer products but unfit for wartime armaments. Unbeknownst to him, U.S. shipyards at that precise instant were deploying 3 Liberty ships each day. As his discussion wrapped up, the Richmond yards would finish yet another ship. Over the following half-year, those same Americans, deemed incapable of aircraft manufacture, would unleash raids involving thousands of bombers against Germany, all while their facilities rolled out fresh cargo vessels every 8 hours. The equation of Germany's downfall emerged not from tactical schemes, but from output figures that would expose the core fallacy in Nazi planning. Hermann Göring's scorn for U.S. manufacturing prowess did not originate in 1943. It stemmed from entrenched patterns in German military doctrine. A celebrated World War I aviator with 22 enemy planes downed, Göring had observed America's delayed and modest role in that earlier war. The U.S. had joined with scarcely any air service and relied on French and British aircraft. This recollection fueled his misguided belief in American limitations. The remark about planes served as Göring's go-to reply whenever probes arose regarding the U.S. menace. He echoed similar phrases during the war's initial phases. In 1940, post the fall of France, he reassured Hitler, "The Americans excel at crafting luxurious automobiles and refrigerators, yet that hardly suggests prowess in aircraft. They're bluffing. They master the art of bluffing." This overconfidence extended beyond Göring alone. German spy networks routinely downplayed U.S. strengths. In November 1941, Oberst Josef Beitsch Schmidt, head of Luftwaffe intelligence, issued a memo asserting that monthly U.S. plane output could not surpass 400 units. His evaluation determined that American plants missed the exact machinery and trained personnel essential for defense manufacturing. German Sea Service reports showed similar disdain. In January 1942, Kapitän zur See reported to Admiral Raeder that U.S. naval construction topped out at roughly 1 freighter weekly per yard. "Their laborers are indolent," he noted, "spoiled by generous pay and brief shifts. They want the rigor of our artisans." Hitler, though often scornful in public, harbored private worries, confiding to his officers in December 1941, "We need a swift victory over Russia. That accomplished, we can confront America before their output swamps us." Yet, Göring, tasked with gauging foe air strength, clung to notions of American frailty. While Göring voiced his derision, the U.S. evolved into what President Franklin Roosevelt termed the arsenal of democracy. During his January 6, 1942, State of the Union speech, Roosevelt revealed ambitious targets. First, to heighten our airplane output so swiftly that in 1942 we deliver 60,000 planes. The pace will persist, enabling 125,000 aircraft next year, including 100,000 fighters. Nazi spies captured these figures. On January 8, 1942, in his journal, propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels recorded, "The Führer chuckled upon seeing Roosevelt's goals. Sheer hype. Achieving even a fraction would defy belief." The Germans overlooked America's groundwork, initiated in 1940, not through arms contracts but via British funds. The British Purchasing Commission, frantic to replenish vessels sunk by U-boats, pitched a bold idea to industrial magnate Henry J. Kaiser: construct 60 freighters via unprecedented assembly methods in ship construction. Kaiser, lacking shipbuilding experience but famed for completing the Hoover Dam early, embraced the task. His methods would transform not only naval yards, but the broader idea of industrial output during conflict. Rather than expert shipbuilders fashioning each hull by hand, Kaiser employed pre-assembled parts, welding over riveting, and auto industry flow lines adapted for maritime use. Manufacturing. The Liberty ship blueprint was intentionally straightforward. It was a 441-foot freighter, drawing from an outdated British model, driven by a triple-expansion steam engine that even basic mechanics could service. When German spies got hold of the blueprints from a torpedoed Liberty ship in early 1942, they scoffed at its primitiveness. Corvette Captain Peter Khmer remarked, "These vessels are death traps, sluggish and clumsy, handling like a lump of stone." What Khmer overlooked was how that very simplicity made the Liberty ship brilliant. Components were all uniform, panels were mass-produced in facilities nationwide and transported to 18 assembly sites, where they snapped together like enormous 3D jigsaws. The skill ramp-up was rapid. Novices without any maritime experience soon outpaced seasoned German shipbuilders in output. The inaugural Liberty, the SS Patrick Henry, hit the water on September 27, 1941, following 244 days of work. German naval analysts observed this approvingly. At such a pace, the U.S. might man. The labor pool featured everyday folks, homemakers, farmhands, and shopkeepers, retooled into expert shipwrights in mere weeks. Standouts included Wendy the welder, actually Janet Doyle, a one-time server who emerged as a top-speed torch handler in the facility. Teaming up with her were Tom Washington, a black sharecropper from Alabama turned expert fitter, and Miguel Santos, a Mexican-American whose welding pace surpassed German benchmarks. On September 23 at 4:30 p.m., the SS Joseph N. Thiel glided down the Columbia River, precisely 10 days from keel laying. In Berlin, German analysts brushed aside the accounts. Admiral Karl Dönitz assured his team, "If accurate, it's merely a gimmick. They can't sustain that output." Yet Kaiser had more up his sleeve. He declared, "We'll beat that time." November 8, 1942, 12:01 a.m., Richmond Shipyard No. 2 in California. As Nazi troops pulled back from El Alamein, U.S., yard crews kicked off a feat that shattered the final shreds of German assurance. The keel for the SS Robert E. Peary was set amid stacks of prefab parts arrayed meticulously beside the slipway. The whole vessel had essentially been fabricated off-site, each element crafted, aligned, and vetted in on-yard shops. Now came the rapid assembly, akin to a colossal fast-build showcase. Kaiser selected his elite crew for this pinnacle push. The squad boasted Catherine Glasgow, an ex-teacher, now among the yard's quickest welders, churning out seams at 35 feet per hour, a mark few German counterparts hit. Richmond Jones, a black ex-sharecropper, maneuvered the primary crane with such accuracy that 250-ton chunks landed within an inch of target. Mary Piccone, a 19-year-old Italian-American, oversaw the wiring squad that strung 5 miles of lines in less than 20 hours. Step by step, the hull materialized at breakneck velocity. The keel plating fused in under 6 hours. The flanks rose within 18 hours. By day's close on the first shift, the frame unmistakably evoked a ship. The ready-made superstructure, pipes and electrics pre-fitted, dropped neatly aboard. Day 2 featured a hoist that would have consumed a week in German yards. The power plant, a 2,500-horsepower triple-expansion steam behemoth at 140 tons, settled in on Day 3. Built in Toledo, run through trials, broken down for transit, and shipped with techs who slotted it home in hours, not weeks. On November 12 at 3:30 p.m., the SS Robert E. Peary launched 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes post-keel. She weighed in at 14,245 tons displacement and required just light finishing before deployment. The unbelievable turned every day. Initial reliable dispatches hit Berlin by December 1942. Recon missions by the Luftwaffe, deploying far-reaching Focke-Wulf FW-200 Condors, returned shots that German intel at first rejected as fakes. The photographs revealed numerous Liberty ships being built simultaneously at individual shipyards. Hedman Wilhelmis tallied more than 200 vessels in progress from overhead images. In his December 15, 1942 submission, he cautioned, "Should these findings hold true, U.S. shipbuilding output surpasses our projections by tenfold. Authorities buried the document. Göring rejected any notion that his evaluation had erred. Those images mislead, he informed his team. The U.S. is merely displaying identical vessels from various perspectives to feign large-scale output. Yet U-boat leaders were noting alarming shifts. Captain Lieutenant Klaus Beaton of U-521 observed in January 1943 that convoy HX-222 included 47 cargo ships, each seeming freshly made, uniform designs clearly churned out in bulk. From where did these vessels originate? The response lay across the nation. Now, 18 U.S. shipyards were crafting Liberty ships. At Bethlehem Fairfield in Baltimore, 47,000 laborers worked, launching one vessel every 4 days. The California Shipbuilding Corporation finished one in 5 days. Employees unfamiliar with the sea were constructing ships quicker than seasoned German artisans. Come March 1943, American facilities were delivering Liberty ships at speeds German minds couldn't grasp. 3 launches occurred each day. Admiral Donitz's aides figured U-boats must destroy 1.3 million tons per month merely to maintain parity. U-boats' peak was November 1942, with 729,000 tons downed. The tide had turned against them. Every Liberty ship demanded 250,000 unique components. Just the frame required 30s and distinct steel sections, shaped to exact measures. Wiring for electrics spanned 25 miles. Inside were 3,500 feet of pipes, 2,500 valves, and 350 miles of welds. Still, U.S. laborers put together these intricate vessels in about 42 days on average by mid-1943. The labor pool itself challenged Nazi racial doctrines. Among the 650,000 shipbuilders, 200,000 were women, Rosie the Riveters, who demonstrated that sex played no role in manufacturing prowess. African Americans, derided by Nazi beliefs as lesser, manned cranes and applied welds, surpassing German benchmarks. At Kaiser's Richmond facility, diverse teams, unthinkable under Nazi segregation, were turning out a ship every 51 hours by May 1943. The variety was immense. Chinese-American welders toiled beside Norwegian newcomers. Riveters of Native American descent from New Mexico teamed with Jewish exiles from Germany. Mexican-American women oversaw groups featuring impoverished whites from Appalachia. This alliance of the so-called underclasses outperformed the German superior race by margins beyond reckoning. In May 1943, at Wolf's Lair in East Prussia, Admiral Dönitz faced Hitler with grim tidings. During the episode dubbed Black May, U-boats suffered 41 losses while accounting for just 50 cargo ships. U.S. yards were constructing vessels 3 times swifter than U-boats could eliminate them. Dönitz informed that Americans had debuted 140 merchant ships the prior month. We took down 41. At this pace, they'll have offset all losses from 1939 by December. Hitler eyed Göring, whose bulky form appeared to wither. "You promised me Americans focused solely on civilian products," Hitler murmured, his tone laced with the threat before his furious outbursts. Göring tried to parry. "Those vessels lack durability, mein Führer. They'll shatter in gales. Our reports, your reports," Hitler cut in, "prove useless. The U.S. eclipses us across all sectors." The figures stood firm. American plants churned out 8,000 planes monthly. Germany's output, even with Albert Speer's initiatives, hit 2,000. U.S. tank output topped 2,000 each month. Germany achieved 500. Liberty ships symbolized an industrial dominance Germany couldn't rival. On October 4, 1943, Göring delivered the address cited at this script's start, holding on to disbelief amid rising proof. Addressing plane producers, he declared, "Americans boast absurd output numbers. They claim 8,000 aircraft monthly. This is utterly implausible. Even if factual, their craftsmanship must falter. Volume absent excellence holds no value." But as words left his mouth, Göring grasped reality. Luftwaffe aviators described American P-51 Mustangs and P-47 Thunderbolts as outmatching German pursuits. B-17s and B-24s darkened German skies in fleets of thousands. The supposedly subpar U.S. planes were methodically ravaging German urban centers. General der Flieger Adolf Galland challenged Göring post-speech. Reichsmarschall, I've reviewed seized U.S. manufacturing data. They're assembling 54 engine bombers each week. That's beyond our total fighter count. Your rejection of their strengths has sealed the Reich's fate. Göring withdrew to Carenhall. He in the aftermath of the war, Hermann Göring retreated to his Carenhall estate, finding solace among the priceless artworks he had plundered from museums across Europe. The most reliable accounts of America's manufacturing prowess came from U-boat sailors who confronted it head-on. Captain Lieutenant Heinz Schaffer of U-977 recounted, by the end of 1943, those convoys had grown massive, 80, 90, or even 100 vessels at times, many fresh off American assembly lines. If we got fortunate, we'd take down one or two, but it felt like scooping water from the sea with a thimble. For each one we destroyed, 3 more would emerge over the horizon. Oberleutnant zur See, Herbert Vögele, who led U-415, offered what might be the most poignant account. Through our periscopes, we spotted the Liberty ships gleaming in new gray paint, their structures showing signs of rapid assembly, welded joints in place of rivets, uniform deck fittings, and matching silhouettes. They arrived in unbroken lines, each group bigger than the previous. It dawned on us that our battle wasn't merely against vessels, but against a whole factory network that outpaced our destruction with ease. The mental toll was crushing. U.S. radio reports celebrated vessel launches like game highlights. Crews on German subs quit tallying sinks because the figures pushed them toward hopelessness. Come January 1944, U.S. output data turned into a tool for morale-breaking broadcasts. German spies had no choice but to tune in as the tallies rolled out. Ships finished in 1943, 238 Liberty ships, 203 Victory ships as enhanced models, 122 tankers, 367 combat craft. Peak monthly outputs. December 1943 saw 155 merchant vessels hit the water, alongside 8,689 planes handed over, 2,164 tanks wrapped up, and 153,000 army trucks churned out. Wilhelm Scharfenberg, leader of the Reich Association of German Industry, briefed Hitler in February 1944. The Americans crank out 100,000 planes yearly against our 25,000, 50,000 tanks to our 19,000, 2.5 million troop carriers to our 100,000, 2,500 cargo ships to our 200. We can't hold these disparities for even 12 more months. Hitler supposedly hurled the document into the fire, yelling, "Pessimistic lies." Yet those projections were understated. Real U.S. yields in 1944 would surpass them handily. Outsider validation arrived via Germany's partners in Japan. Commander Toshikazu Omai, deputy naval attaché in Berlin, wired Tokyo in coded form during March 1944. Berlin's top brass keeps downplaying U.S. output potential. I've confirmed they floated 173 ships just in February. Local authorities dismiss it. This denial risks our joint operations. Advise the Imperial Fleet to count on U.S. rates being twice what Germans project. Japanese forces clashing with American strength in the Pacific harbored no such misconceptions. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto had cautioned prior to Pearl Harbor, "I can rampage freely for half a year. Beyond that, victory seems unlikely." He perceived what Göring never did, that once roused, U.S. factory power appeared boundless to any foe. On June 6, 1944, D-Day marked the pinnacle display of that might. Defending Germans beheld a fleet beyond imagination, 6,939 ships, featuring countless Liberty vessels packed with gear, transports, and munitions. General Lieutenant Wilhelm Richter, overseeing the 716th Infantry Division, observed, "The ocean looks solid with hulls. They extended endlessly in all directions. This isn't a landing, it's a full relocation. Each Liberty craft in that enormous array embodied 42 days' worth of U.S. factory labor. Every tank hitting the sand was among 88 out of 410 the nation would forge across the conflict. Every Jeep was one of 639,025 destined for production belts. The landing boats themselves, thousands strong, had sprung from inland yards in spots like Evansville, Indiana, and Quincy, Illinois, crafted by hands unfamiliar with salt water. Oberst Ernst Goth, holding Sword Beach, reflected afterward. Propaganda claimed Yanks were weak, their troops quick to crumble, their gear second-rate, yet I saw their builders erect a Mulberry Harbor in 5 days, bigger than typical Reich harbors. Their rigs scaled our barricades like sure-footed climbers. Their so-called subpar planes cleared the skies of the Luftwaffe. Even with U.S. explosives raining on Berlin by February 1945, Göring clung to his illusions. He assured aides, "Those U.S. numbers are exaggerated. Plenty of those ships must be fake wooden props for show." His second-in-command, General der Flieger Karl Kesselring, noted, "The Reichsmarschall dwells in dreams. Just yesterday, 1,000 U.S. bombers leveled Luna. Still, he swears they couldn't possibly assemble that many." When I presented him wreckage tags from downed bombers attesting to at least 15,000 B-17s and B-24s constructed, he branded me a quitter. Reality hit harder. By conflict's close, America had delivered 3148 heavy bombers, including 18 482 B-24 Liberators and 12 31 B-17 Flying Fortresses. Just this aircraft type outstripped Germany's full wartime aviation. As Allied forces seized the Reich Air Ministry in May 1945, U.S. troops uncovered Hermann Göring's intelligence dossiers. Numerous documents cautioning about U.S. industrial might bore his personal stamps, labeling them as untrustworthy or mere faux misinformation. A June 1943 dispatch described an American yard in Panama, observable from international seas, where observers tallied 17 Liberty ships in simultaneous build. It projected a finish pace of 1 vessel every 3 days. Göring scribbled back, "Unfeasible, informant tainted or deranged." Yet another update from December 1943 celebrated the launch of the 1,000th Liberty ship. His marginal note, "Fabricated claims, true tally likely under 200. Major William Hutchinson, poring over these papers afterward, remarked, "It was breathtaking to witness the extent of self-deception in German command. They possessed solid intel, yet dismissed it outright, as it clashed with their ideological biases and outdated notions from before the conflict." During the 1946 Nuremberg trials, Göring faced irrefutable output data: 2,710 Liberty ships, 531 Victory ships, 296 429 planes, 88,410 tanks, 2,383 311 Army vehicles. He countered, "Such numbers reflect volume, not excellence. Germans prioritize superiority and craftsmanship against mere mass." But prosecutor Robert Jackson then presented a 1944 German assessment penned by Göring's subordinates, conceding U.S. planes outclassed theirs in velocity, endurance, protective plating, weaponry, and dependability. Göring went quiet. In private talks with psychiatrist Dr. Gustav Gilbert, he eventually confessed, "I misjudged the Americans terribly. I viewed them as pampered weaklings, corrupted by affluence." My assertion that they managed only civilian products? I truly thought so. It ranked as my gravest error ever. They overwhelmed us with a torrent of output. This German scorn for U.S. potential proved deadly. Admiral Dönitz pressed on with the U-boat offensive well beyond any realistic hope of success. From the 40,000 sailors who crewed those submarines, 28,000 perished, a 70% loss figure, unmatched by any branch in any military throughout the war. These sailors lost their lives pursuing vessels that outpaced their destruction rate. The Luftwaffe, swayed by Göring's vows of scant American plane yields, kept up attacks far past the point when they ought to have hunkered down defensively. Outcome: 433,000 airmen lost in battles against a rival churning out 50 aircraft per each German one. The U-boat saga illustrates it best. Germany constructed 1,162 U-boats over the war. They dispatched nearly 3,000 Allied vessels, including 175 combat ships and 2,125 cargo carriers. Still, the Allies fabricated 5,177 merchant hulls. For each downed, 2 more took to the waves. Numbers don't fabricate truths, no matter how much Reich marshals might. Fueling those Liberty ships were 18 million U.S. citizens immersed in munitions work. exceeding the total size of Germany's military. The Richmond yards peaked with 93,000 hands, dwarfing the Reich's whole naval construction sector. These laborers hailed from all corners, dismantling Nazi delusions of ethnic and class supremacy. Emma Martinez, a Mexican-American at Todd Houston Shipbuilding, welded flawless 300-foot stretches per shift, a benchmark few German welders attained. Dorothy Luck, an Oakland homemaker, mastered crane duties, managing 250-ton hauls. Thomas Washington, a black sharecropper from Alabama, excelled as a shipfitter, surpassing Teutonic benchmarks in accuracy. They toiled amid setups Nazi rule deemed unthinkable, mixed dining halls defying regional bias laws, daycare for moms on the job, clinics offering gratis medical aid. Pay hit $1.20 hourly, topping what Reich experts made in a full day. They invested extra cash in victory bonds, unlike German toilers threatened with death for lagging. The gap was glaring. American hands opted for bonus shifts out of patriotism and incentive. Reich plants turned ever more to forced captives from subjugated lands who wrecked output whenever feasible. As U.S. workers' kids hit classrooms, German youth got conscripted into flak units. Where Americans pitched upgrades that boosted rates, Reich staff flagging flaws courted execution for pessimism. Liberty ships embodied Yankee ingenuity beyond German reach. Arc welding supplanted bolts, slashing build times by 30% and tonnage by 600 tons. Lincoln Electric's method stunned, seized German technicians as unattainable until proven in action. Modular assembly hit peaks the Reich never touched. Full superstructures rose far from docks, fitted with pipes, wiring, even fixtures, then hauled via custom rail and hoisted by 250-ton cranes, fivefold the lift of Germany's top dockside gear. The whole manufacturing approach marked a breakthrough. Henry Kaiser pioneered conveyor methods whereby specialized laborers focused on particular jobs. For instance, a welder could spend months perfecting one kind of weld, reaching levels of efficiency and accuracy that outstripped conventional approaches. The training process proved so demanding that novices unfamiliar with ships in July were surpassing experienced German shipbuilders by December. Assembling each Liberty ship demanded supplies gathered from every corner of the United States, transported with a precision that German supply experts once deemed unattainable. Steel sheets from Pittsburgh showed up right on cue. Complete and pre-checked engines from Toledo arrived as promised. Electrical generators from Schenectady materialized exactly when required. The rail network underpinning this feat hauled immense volumes. In 1943, the Pennsylvania Railroad alone shifted 50 million tons of wartime goods, outpacing Germany's whole rail infrastructure, even with its use of forced labor. U.S. railways pulled this off, all while sustaining regular passenger routes for the public. Major Hans Kehl, a German supply expert who examined U.S. manufacturing post-war, observed, "We labored to provision isolated plants. The Americans provisioned whole sectors. We tallied individual rail cars. They tallied full trains. We schemed in weeks. They schemed in years." Even as Liberty ships flooded off the lines, U.S. innovators refined the blueprint. The Victory ships, launched in 1944, boasted higher speeds of 15 to 17 knots compared to 11, greater size and complexity, yet they were constructed nearly as swiftly, averaging 42 days. This Victory ship initiative showcased America's talent for advancing designs amid high-volume output. Fresh turbine power plants supplanted earlier setups. Upgraded hull shapes boosted velocity and volume. Superior air systems protected shipments. Advanced steering gear heightened reliability. These enhancements integrated seamlessly without hampering the pace. In opposition, Germany's push to upgrade U-boats via the Type 21 initiative sparked disorder. Just 4 Type 21 U-boats reached service before the conflict closed, while the U.S. churned out 531 Victory ships over 18 months. The vast economic chasm rendered Göring's scorn unfounded right away. In 1941, American GDP hit $126 billion against Germany's $35 billion. U.S. steel output reached 80 million tons. Germany's stood at 20 million tons. America generated 26 billion kilowatt-hours of power. Germany managed 8 billion. During the war, American manufacturing surged 170%, while German output climbed a mere 30% amid Shah's frantic pushes. By 1944, U.S. war spending topped $90 billion yearly, exceeding Germany's total pre-war GDP. The Liberty ship effort alone ran $4.6 billion, topping Germany's full U-boat program costs. Dr. Ralph Wagenfuhr, overseer of German war data, determined post-war that America exceeded Germany 6.1 in basic resources, 8.1 in completed products, and 12.1 in haulage power. We were not defeated, we were buried. U.S. manufacturing emerged as a force in its own right. The Office of War Information aired figures into Germany. German troops learned of ships emerging every 8 hours, planes every 5 minutes, tanks every 7 minutes. Skepticism faded only upon confrontation. Gerrit Helmut Roma, holding Normandy, recalled, "The Americans claimed 10,000 planes for D-Day. We scoffed. Then the heavens darkened with flyers. Every claim they labeled as hype proved factual. Every assurance from our commanders proved hype. Each Liberty ship stood as an emblem of U.S. dominance. German media derided them as homely misfits, but submariners recognized reality. One detained U-boat sailor confided to questioners, "Convoys swelling to 50, 60, 70 of those vessels signaled defeat. Numbers don't deceive, no matter the spin from leaders." Post-surrender, U.S. analysts polled German industry heads on their war evaluations. Their verdicts consistently condemned Göring's views. Fritz Thyssen, the steel baron who aided Hitler's ascent, declared, "Göring dwelled in illusion." In the 1920s, he toured America, glimpsing only speakeasies and jazz dens, ignoring steelworks or assembly lines. His blindness doomed Germany. Albert Schar's critique cut deeper. Göring's rejection of American output amounted to reckless oversight. "When I took over armaments, recovery was impossible. The Americans output in a month what we needed a year for. The Liberty ships merely spotlighted an industrial edge we couldn't rival." Even Alfred Krug, whose plants epitomized German excellence, conceded, "We crafted the finest steel globally, but in craftsman-scale batches. The Americans made solid steel in vast seas. A single Liberty ship held steel for 50 Tiger tanks. They launched 2,610 Liberty ships. We assembled 1,347 Tiger tanks. The math is undeniable." The Soviet Union, wartime partner yet philosophical foe to America, marveled at this industrial might. Liberty ships sustained not only Britain, but the Soviet campaign too. Marshal Georgy Zhukov noted in his recollections, "The Americans supplied us 400,000 trucks, 13,000 tanks, 15 Kreutzers. The U.S. supplied 300,000 planes along with 17 million tons of materials. Yet what really stunned us were the Liberty ships, ferrying those essentials across perilous Arctic seas while facing relentless assaults from German forces. Every vessel that made it to Murmansk symbolized a triumph of U.S. manufacturing prowess against the Nazi U-boats. Absent those ships, our push toward Berlin would have stalled completely." Nikita Khrushchev, overseeing Ukraine's wartime factory output, spoke with his usual directness. "Lacking U.S. trucks, our guns couldn't advance. Without American metal, tank construction halted. Scant on U.S. rations, feeding the troops proved impossible. Those Liberty vessels delivered it all, from footwear and wiring to canned meat." Göring's scorn for American factories handed us a huge advantage. It blinded Germany to the powerhouse fueling assaults on both their flanks. Soviet naval leader Nikolai Kuznetsov offered crucial insight. Countless vessels fell to German U-boats in those northern routes. Yet for each one lost, the Americans churned out 3 replacements. The Nazis might torpedo a few, but the U.S. could produce fleets without end. Now, the raw figures. The ultimate tally exposed Göring's disastrous error. Liberty ships, 2,110 completed, 18 yards at work. Typical build time, 42 days by 1943. Record speed, 4 days, 15 hours, 29 minutes. Combined cargo capacity, 292,000 tons. Per ship cost, 1 to 8 million on average. Overall merchant fleet, 5,777 ships of every kind. 56 million deadweight tons, outstripping every other country's total. Peak yard labor, 1.7 million employees. Women, 600,000, 35%. African Americans, 250,000, 14%. Hourly pay average, 120. Side-by-side output, USA versus Germany. Planes, 296 409 to 111 67. Tanks, 88 410 to 60 or near Tahentfao. Trucks, 2,383 at the 3-way from 11 to 350,000. Guns, 257 390 to 159 147. Machine guns, 240 to 100,000. Shells, 41 billion to 8 billion. U-boat records, Germany launched 162, Allies sank 785. U-boats claimed nearly 3,000 Allied hulls. Allies constructed 577. Result, nearly 3 extra ships for the good guys. Beyond reshaping battles, Liberty ships reshape daily life. Yard diversity, despite regional restrictions, foreshadowed future equality gains. Female workers demonstrated their skills for good, altering labor norms permanently. Kaiser's employee medical plan evolved into Kaiser Permanente, aiding 12 million today. Building methods from the Liberty effort changed shipmaking everywhere. Welding overtook riveting globally. Modular parts turned routine. The production line idea shaped after-war yards in Japan and Korea, where they later outpaced U.S. output with methods born in America. Above all, Liberty ships showed free societies could rally stronger than dictatorships. That voluntary labor outperformed forced toil, that varied teams built power, not frailty. They confirmed Roosevelt's idea of the U.S. as freedom's forge. At Nuremberg, facing the noose, Göring kept his noble poise but couldn't dodge the truth anymore. In his closing words to the tribunal, he skipped U.S. output altogether, a quiet concession. On October 15, 1946, just 2 hours shy of the gallows, Göring ended it all with a hidden cyanide pill. He perished, at last grasping his illusions. Dr. Gustav Gilbert, the jail doctor, noted Göring's parting words on American factories. I ought to have seen it. A country that raised the Empire State Building in 410 days could craft whatever it wanted. But our tales of U.S. decay fooled me. Those Liberty ships deserved the name Triumph vessels right away. They embodied our downfall in steel and rivets. Nowadays, just 2 Liberty ships remain afloat, the SS John W. Brown and SS Jeremiah O'Brien. They serve as the final sailing testaments to the mightiest manufacturing feat ever. As they glide past the Statue of Liberty on tribute voyages, their horns resound over waves once prowled by U-boats, evoking the era when free rule faced foes who deemed it feeble. Commander Edward Elberg, directing recovery at Normandy, summed up their role perfectly. They looked rough, plodded along, and stayed basic. But they showed up in droves, hauling from Sherman armor to sweets, from shells to medical fluids. They linked U.S. plants to the battle zones. Göring figured Americans stuck to luxuries. He couldn't have been more off base. We forged it all, victory included. The 2010 Liberty ships endures warnings against scorning free systems through bias and false ideas. Hermann Göring's belittling of U.S. factories as mere makers of trifles rings as history's top blunder in strategy. As he nursed dreams of American frailty, U.S. laborers were busy showing that in freedom's forge, imagination alone set the boundaries, and adversaries bold enough to probe its potential were in desperately short supply. Far more than simple freighters, the Liberty ships embodied 10,000-ton evidence that liberty, when effectively harnessed, could overwhelm despotism through sheer volume, making strategic brilliance beside the point. They showed how conflicts might be decided in workshops every bit as decisively as amid the clash of arms, and warned that scorning manufacturing might, for fantasies of ethnic superiority, courts nothing less than fatal risk.